Hey, so this is my berry cage and also what I call my silky room. And it's not just silkies, but it's called the silky room because that's how it started. This is a room in my biggest setup known as Chicken City. I've made a couple of videos on the whole setup. So if you're interested in the major Chicken City setup, go watch one of those other videos. But this is kind of a deep dive into this setup because I think even though this is a kind of one part of a big setup I've got, I actually think this setup is quite a good standalone setup for someone at home wanting to set up chickens. So what it is, and again, ignore the fact it's part of a bigger system, it's a room which has got wire on all sides and also wire on the top. So it's completely predator proof, nothing can get in, and these chickies cannot get out. Let's talk about what's growing here. She's having a little sunbake. So growing in here are my caneberries. They are really hardy crops, for want of a better word. So, it's really hard for the chickens to do any major damage to them. So they're a good thing to grow in with them. Secondly, berries are very popular with native birds, etc. So by growing them in our chicken coop, we are protecting not only our chickens, but also protecting our berry crops. Berry crops create this dense kind of carpet throughout summer and autumn, and then in winter they lose all their leaves. So the reason this works so well with having chickens is that in summer, on a day like today, it's super hot, and being super hot is very dangerous for chickens. They can overheat really fast. So in summer they can all, and they usually do, hang out in this kind of understory area that's beautiful and cool, beautiful and moist. They've got ample protection from the berry canes over the top. Mind you, I do have to train. Yes, hello. Hello. I do have to train the berry canes to kind of be up. Otherwise, they would just trail on the ground. So you train them up, and then the chickens have this beautiful shady spot underneath, okay, in summer. In winter, all these leaves drop off, and you're just left with the canes. And that's also brilliant for chickens because in winter, chickens need a good dose of sunshine and sunlight. So then this actually opens up this whole room and we get some beautiful winter sunlight in here. So that kind of happy balance between what we need in summer and what we need in winter, berries totally provide. The other thing is when the berries fall to the ground. So most of these I'll pick and I'll enjoy, but often, ones do fall to the ground. The chickens eat them. And this is good for the chickens. It gives them something to do, some entertainment, and it's also healthy for them. Keeps the fruit flies under control because there is no fallen fruit just hanging on the ground. So again, it works really well in that it's beneficial for the chickens, but it's also beneficial for me as a grower to have those berries that have fallen to be eaten and not be left there. So you can see these lower branches, the chickens do chew them, okay? And look, I don't mind. As I said, these plants are super hardy. They're not affected by the fact that a few of the low-hanging branches. Look at this little one. She's trying to get to the raspberries. The plants aren't concerned about the pecking that the chickens can do, or like that little one pecking through the wire, okay? So it's like there's enough there that the chickens can have fun pecking what they can reach, but I know they're not going to do ample damage to the plants. What they would do damage to, you see these like young raspberries, for example, that have just shot up. If I didn't have these wired with this wire here, the chickens would absolutely eat those down to be nothing. So it is important, and you can see here this whole line is wired, that your little starter shoots are protected. In winter, you can take off that wire and let the chickens in to do the weeding and do the fertilizing with their poo. But in summer, spring and autumn as well for raspberries, you really need to keep the chickens off. You can see with these berries, and I mentioned this in the other video, same deal, right? The chickens can get to the beds, but there is this wire mesh around it. So any new canes that the vine, is it a vine? I don't know. Any new canes the plant shoots up, the chickens can't get to. And if the plant gets too enthusiastic, like my loganberry has over there, that's fine, because the shoots actually come out of the wire, but then the chickens shoot them down. So it keeps the plant controlled as well. Now, I never have to weed in here ever, which is, you know, a pretty tedious job in the garden, because these girls do it for me. So they're happy in the berries. I have less work as far as weeding, which I don't enjoy. They'll also do their poo, most of which in the garden bed. So there's the fertilizer. Any poo they do on this kind of walkway area, every few months I scrape up this straw and put it on the garden bed over here. So that just builds up the garden bed and transfers those nutrients exactly where I want them to the berries. So that's kind of the plants in the berry room. And as I said, you need to tie them to keep them up, because if they do just trail on the ground, the chickens will eat them. So to have the chickens in here permanently, we need to house them. So this is their house here. This is something I bought online. Frankly, it's not the most durable thing. I think probably after another wet winter and it might be cactus, but it's the right size for 4 little chicks. So what I've got, well, they're not 4 little chicks. They're 3 little silkies, like this girl here, and then 1 gold-laced Wyandotte that you saw before, who's actually quite big, but she was getting picked on by her friends, well, maybe they weren't her friends, in the other chicken room. So she is now a member of the Silkie clan. And the reason the Silkies are separate are they're such a, like, friendly, shy, timid bird that I find when you have them in a big flock with the other dominant breeds, they just don't thrive. They're always the bottom of the pecking order, and honestly, I just found they weren't happy. So by separating them out into this room, I can tell you they are so much more happier. And you can see them, you know, they're pecking around, they're getting on with each other, they're doing what chickens do. If you've got a chicken or a silkie that's, you know, sitting in the house all day or hiding all day, that is a really big problem, and that is absolutely not good chicken welfare. So I think if silkies are the breed you're interested in, my advice would be have only silkies. Have silkies in a bigger number and have a couple of other docile breeds with them, but make sure that the silkies are the majority number of birds, or have 2 systems running. And honestly, this is kind of time consuming and a lot more work to have 2 separate sets of chickens, but for the moment I'm happy to do it, and I think everyone's happier, so that's important to me. Whether I'll run 2 setups forever, I don't know, but stay tuned. But I've done this for a couple of years now, and look, it works really well. The question is, you know, are you up for the extra work? So the chicken house here for these 4 girls, I've shut the door because this little one here is broody, and I'm trying to encourage her not to be. That's the thing with silkies. If you don't want broody, don't get silkies. I'll open that up now. She's going to go straight in, I bet you. Let's see. So this door stays open 24/7. There's no need for me to shut it even at night, because this whole thing is wired. It's completely predator proof. So that's the other thing with silkies, is they sleep low to the ground. They're incredibly fragile and susceptible to predators. So having them in this fully enclosed setup just makes sure that they're safe, and I can sleep well at night knowing that. And if I don't get home till midnight, it's no problem. I don't have to rush back to kind of lock the chicken house. She's getting a bit coy. I'm surprised she's not going in. So what is in this chicken house is some feathers, because our Wyandotte there is molting, but you can see this is a nesting box here, and then there's a roost down the middle, and then there's another nesting box at the other end. Honestly, they often sleep in the nesting box, but whatever, I've just got to clean this shit out more regularly. What I use in this small house is actually, I think it's wheat chaff. I find that is way better if you've got a really small setup, like I do here for the chickens. I use straw in the main chicken house, which you would have seen from my other video. But here I've got the chaff. It's super absorbent, so I find that I don't need to change it anywhere near as much, and it doesn't go moldy. Like, if this was filled with straw, I would need to change this all the time. So the wheaten chaff, it's more expensive, but given you don't use very much of it, especially in a house like this size, I would highly recommend it. And I use like a cat litter scoop to like sift out the poo maybe every couple of weeks. I also dust it with diatomaceous earth. Oh, here she comes. Oh no, she's not. I dust it with diatomaceous earth quite regularly to try and keep mites, lice, that kind of thing out of the house. And the chickens actually do dust bath in here during the day, so it is good to have those lice protectants in the chaff. And look, if you're going to run a small house like this, you do need to be more cautious of managing the poo. Like in my big house, I could go months and really not do much with it because the straw, it's such a big space and there's so much straw in there. But in a small space, it does require a little bit more management. So this setup isn't as user-friendly as my other one. But as I said, I think it's important for the chickens. And if this is all I could have and all the space I had, or all the, the finances was this small chicken house, I mean, it's great, right? Like it totally does the job. As I said, I've had it for years. I've done these 2 setups for years. I'm certainly not complaining about it. Is it the gold standard? No, it is not. Can you have very healthy, happy, ethically raised chickens that you can manage with a house like that? Yes, absolutely. I have it on some bricks to keep it off the ground just to try and prolong that wood, which I find better, and also try and keep some of the moisture out of it. So yeah, that's got the 2 side bits for the eggs. It's got a ventilation bit at the top, which is ventilation in a chicken house is super important, okay? You do not want there not being airflow. That is like moisture buildup, especially in winter, is really damaging to chickens. So you got the house, you got the nesting boxes. I've got water dishes here. These are 2 dog bowls. Well, that's a dog bowl I use for their water. This is like a ceramic garden dish. In fact, the lady who sold it to me said you can even bake cakes in it. That works really well as a water dish, although both these get really dirty very quickly, so they're probably not the best thing to use. But especially when it's hot like today, I just like to give them heaps of options. Should one run out, or should one chicken be feeling a little territorial and they're not letting their mates have a drink, I've got the 2 options there. But what my main drinker setup is drink setup is this thing here, which is basically like a pipe with these drinking cups on it that fills, and this is from Dynachook, that fills up as the chickens drink this, these things go down, and then that encourages the water to come up. So you got to wash these out quite frequently, but other than that, it's not as big of a deal washing out the little cups as it is washing out the big water things. And then this you just take that off and fill it up with water. Now the reason that water is quite brown is because it has apple cider vinegar in it. Would highly recommend you put apple cider vinegar in your chicken's drinking water. It keeps the drinking vessel cleaner, but it's also super healthy for the birds and does a lot of good things for managing internal parasites and that kind of thing. So that keeps getting filled up, and then a splash, like a shot glass of apple cider vinegar every time. And you'll notice these chickens on the other side that are in the fruit room, they will stick their heads through and drink from this drinker as well. I don't know why, they have plenty of drinkers themselves, but they like that one. So that's the water setup. Again, lots of options. For 4 chickens, we've effectively got three kind of drinking vessels, maybe 4 if you include the 2 cups. But it's super important. Chickens drink so much water, and if they don't have access to it and it's a hot day, they're going to die. It's as simple as that. Last thing you need is food. This is their little feeder. Now, I made this. Well, I didn't make it myself. I'm not particularly handy. I had a friend who was particularly handy, so he has nailed it together for me. But basically what it is like, it's like a box with one side open and then this roofing. Because the thing with chicken feed is you cannot let it get moldy. It will make your chickens incredibly sick if the food gets moldy. And in winter, here in Mount Macedon, it's so wet that moldy food before I had this set up was a real problem. I've got this shade cloth on it to try and just keep it a bit cooler in summer. And now I've got this mesh on it because I'm trying to encourage my passion fruit to grow onto the roof, and that's going to naturally shade and keep the food cool and also provide more space for the passion fruit. So like everything in the garden, I'm always looking for things to have multiple uses. So one use is I get passion fruits, the other use is the chicken feeder gets shaded. So I use this all year round, not just in winter. And then from the roof there, I have like a hanging setup, and then this is just like your standard plastic hanging feeder that's got their pellets in it, and then some straw on the base of it. And look, they find, there's no problem them going in there. Rats and mice can't get up into it as long as I keep the height right. That looks slightly low at the moment, but you'll know if mice or rats are getting in because you'll see poo around the place. So I feel certain they're not getting into that at the moment. Oh my God, check out the side of that slug. Oh my God. That is a monster. Holy. I'll feed that to the chickens later. I'll see if they're interested. Might even be too big for them. So you can see that this is like sheltered here. So when it rains, this is the other thing with chickens, and especially chickens with feathered feet like silkies. When it rains, they need a place to get out of the rain. Like chickens will hang around when there's a drizzle, but when it really starts to rain, they need somewhere to go. So by having that roof be extra extended and having that house set up whenever it rains, of course, sometimes they go back into their main house, but they also often perch on the side there and hang out until the rain is over. So again, double usage. Here we have a way to keep the food dry, and we also have a shelter for them when needed. And look, that system works really well. It doesn't take up a huge amount of space. In fact, this was dead space in the garden anyway. Underneath it is like all the valves for the watering system, which I almost never need to access, but one day should you, so that house can just lift straight off and I can access them if I need. And then here I've got a tree stump that I nailed a branch onto, which I did years ago, and it's held up really well, and the chickens really love perching on that. So that's another thing to think about, just giving them some more entertainment. And by having the edge of it kind of extend out here, you can see that's under the shelter. So often when it rains, they'll actually perch on the edge there, and they're protected from the rain. So that is the entire setup, and I think you could set up this thing in your garden as well, just having the one room with everything enclosed, as long as you've got a dry place for them to sleep, lay eggs, eat, shelter. You've got the water covered, you've got shade in winter, you've got shade in summer, you've got sun in winter. You're gonna have some really happy, healthy chooks. So again, a deep dive into my berry room of my much larger system known as Chicken City, or an idea of how to have a standalone chicken coop when you don't want it to be or can't have it be as big as my whole Chicken City setup. This is a really good, I think medium option for you. Okay. Again, any questions on this room, this video, or any of my others, absolutely let me know. I can think of nothing I'd prefer to talk about more than my chickens and, educating people to keep their own chickens and to make sure those chickens are happy and healthy and ethically looked after is really important to me. So more than happy to help. Leave any questions below.